right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Bowl podcast. Dave, me, and Nick here. We know 2022 preview and prediction for the Washington State Cougars. Jake Diker, he was on staff the last 2 years as a defensive coordinator, performed well as an interim, 3-3 to close out the year with close losses to BYU, Central Michigan, held up with Oregon even on the road. So they decided to keep him after the firing of Nick Rolovich. Eric Morris comes over from Incarnate Word, spent the past 4 years there as the head coach. He's a great offensive mind. He was the OC at Texas Tech when Pat Mahomes was there, so he obviously has great coaching experience under Cliff Kingsbury. And Brian Ward, previously at Nevada and Syracuse. He comes over as a defensive coordinator and also brings a handful of transfers with him. We'll get to that here later. We're kicking things off with this offense, Nick. They only get 5 starters back, but I think they're going to get better. Cam Ward follows Eric Morris over from Incarnate Word, where they had great success together. 4,600 yards and 47 touchdowns last year. That was his second year as a starter. Back in 2020, in 6 games, he had a 24-4 TD to INT ratio. This guy can sling it. 2 great years in the air raid system. 6'2", 223. Lightly recruited out of Texas, but the kid has some good arm talent. Eric Morris and those guys over there in Incarnate Word found him. He's produced great for them. And kind of like last year, a guy named Bailey Zappi followed his old play caller over from an FCS school to an FBS school, and they put up great numbers. What do you expect from Cam Ward?
Yeah, I think Cam Ward's such a crazy talent. There's a lot of talent here at the lower level of football that they lay up the scoreboard and they make the move up to FBS, and it's whether hit or miss, really. Billy Zappi is one of those guys that's a success story. There's some definitely misses out there, but I think Ward has potential to be an absolute boom prospect here. I love what he can do. I love his arm talent. 47 touchdowns last year is ridiculous. 4,600 yards is also ridiculous. This guy can sling it. I love that he has his coordinator with him, former coach coordinator Eric Morris. I think the two of them together are going to be fantastic. I think this is going to be a lights out offense. It's going to be just light the scoreboard up week in, week out. Super talented. I think Ward has a lot of potential. I'm excited to see what he can do.
We'll lightly touch on the running game before we look at his weapons. Wisconsin transfer Nakia Watson is going to take over the lead running back duties. They lose their top 2 rushers. He's going to be joined by a few freshmen in the backfield. The offense doesn't change much. Might even run the ball even less now, because they go from the run and shoot now to the air raid. Max Borghi, though, was a big loss because he's a dual threat guy. 3-star Jalen Jenkins, though, figures to be heavily involved after a really good summer. Coaching staff was highly impressed with him. Only 121 yards per game on the ground last year, 3.9 yards per carry. Not bad numbers, but of course we want to see some more efficiency. You got any thoughts on this running game?
I think Watson's a solid back. Didn't really have a whole lot of touches last year, only 36. I'd like to see him get that up a little bit. I think he has some raw talent and potential. Some of these transfers not too bad as well, but I don't really see them running the ball a whole lot this year.
Now, they lose the 2 top pass catchers from a season ago, but they return 3 guys that played plenty of snaps last year. There's John Stribling, 44 grabs for 483 yards and 5 touchdowns. Donovan Ali, 6'3", 210, and then Lincoln Victor, 5'9", 180. Both of those guys had 300-plus yards. Joining them is Renard Bell, back from injury. Plenty of production to his name, a 4-year contributor. He's going to get to go here after not playing last season. And then Robert Farrell, transfers from Incarnate Word, follows Morris and Ward. Like I said about Bailey Zappi, he had a guy named Jarrett Stearns who followed him and Ketley over to Western Kentucky. He set records I think he had 1,900 yards receiving. Might be in store here for these guys as well. 74 receptions, 815 yards, 9 scores last year. He's a 5'9", 170-pounder coming over from the FCS level, but he was a very solid producer, and he knows the offense, so he's going to play a lot. This is overall a very deep group of pass catchers, Nick, with a guy like Bell who's left over from the Mike Leach days.
Yeah, it's an underrated group. A lot of people are not really looking at what this potential here. I like it a lot. I think there's a lot of talent top to bottom with this group. I think Stribling is a really talented guy. Had a good year last year, 10.7 yards per catch, 5 touchdowns for him. Ollie, too, 11.6 yards per catch, solid guy. Victor, 13.5 yards per catch, 2 touchdowns for Victor as well. I like this pass core, and with a guy like Cam Ward at quarterback, he's going to sling it out to them nonstop all game. I think this team can light it up on the scoreboard.
Now, the offensive line, they lose 3 starters, but tackles Jarrett Kingston and Grant Stevens, a Northern Colorado transfer. I think they give them some good experience there. Depth is nothing but redshirt freshmen, though, Nick. They could certainly be in trouble if health becomes a concern at any point in the season. I think overall this is a pretty solid group, but, again, if they get beat up, they might be in some trouble.
Right, the depth here I'm a little concerned about. I do like what they have on the starting. I think especially the right side of it with the Grant Stevens, the transfer coming in, solid guy. I think he's got some good experience. I like what they have at the tackle positions. Both of them, Stevens and Kingston, are solid left and right tackles, but the depth is really concerning me. I look at the depth chart, I see a lot of freshmen here, redshirt freshmen, true freshmen, so I get a little concerned about that potentially. But top to bottom, this is a decent offensive line. I think they can protect Cam Ward.
Looking at the defense, the Cougars get back 6 starters. The run defense progressed slightly last year, but the pass rush was much better. They get 4 seniors back on this D-line, so they should continue to make some good strides. Ron Stone, a first-team all-conference performer last year, he's back after 63 tackles and 11.5 tackles for loss. Him and Brandon Jackson form a nice duo. Jackson had 46 tackles, 6 tackles for loss. Andrew Edson and Quinn Roth provide good depth. Those guys got on the field a good bit last year. So I like this pass rush because I got 4 guys that are going to play a lot, that all have good experience and all produce pretty solidly. Not much size on the interior D-line, but experience for days on this group as well. Christian Meja, Antonio Pule, those are 2 guys I'm circling. They also had to transfer and Melania to match up with. Guys are loaded with depth and experience here on this D-line, Nick. I'm very impressed.
Yeah, I think this D-line's actually really solid. A lot of people are not looking at the potential they have here. Ron Stone, I love what he can do. 11.5 tackles for loss, 5 sacks for him, 3 pass breakups. Super talented guy on the edge. I like to see him come off. Then, I look at Jackson as well. Another talented edge rusher. I like the potential of him. 4.5 sacks last year, 2 pass breakups, a forced fumble, and an interception. I like this defensive line. I think it's solid top to bottom. I expect big things out of them this year.
Losing Jihad Woods at linebacker after many great years is a big blow, but they add Deion Henley from Nevada, follows Brian Ward over, 103 tackles, 4 picks, 4 pass breakups. He did a little bit of everything for them last year. Travion Brown, Kyle Thornton, some vets who played last year. Overall, this is a very sound front 7, Nick, and I expect these guys to be much better against the run and overall playmaking. I think this is a very high upside unit. They should impress this season.
I like this front 7 a whole lot. Super talented top to bottom. I like the potential they have. Yes, they do have to replace some productive in Woods. Super productive guy of 109 tackles last year that they replaced. But I like the work they do in the portal top to bottom. I think this is a decent defensive line that can stop the run a lot this year.
Secondary was quite good last year as well. They got hammered by USC early on in the year, which was a bad look because the starter Slovis got hurt. Jackson Dart gets rushed into action, and he shined against the secondary. But after that, they didn't have many poor efforts the rest of the season. They were great versus Utah, looked good against Cal, Oregon State as well. An impressive 3-game stretch from early October, from late September. A 60% completion rate, allowed pretty solid number. They only allowed 16 touchdowns compared to 15 interceptions. They lose some talented defensive backs, but they return Derek Langford, nice length at 6'3". He's got 3 forced fumbles and 2 picks last year. Armani Marsh in the slot, 70 tackles, 3 picks, 5.5 tackles for loss, 2 forced fumbles. He did a little bit of everything. And then another guy who forced a lot of fumbles, and Jordan Lee, another big ad from Nevada. He follows Brian Ward over. He had 85 tackles and 3 forced fumbles. They had Sam Lockett and Cam Lumpkin as well from a portal. I just read off the numbers for you. They got a lot of guys who love to make things happen. They force turnovers. They make plays. The secondary, even though they lose a lot of, a good bit of talent, this 4-2-5 is going to see a lot of zone. It's a mixed bag for me on the secondary because you got 3 new faces with 2 good players. But Lee's obviously familiar with this scheme, and I think that's obviously going to be big for them. I think they're going to progress very nicely, and Lee coming over is a big reason why.
I like Langford a whole lot. I think he has some serious potential. 39 total tackles, 2 interceptions for him last year, 3 pass breakups, and 3 forced fumbles. He's a super talented guy. I like to see him be a leadership. There's a lot of transfers here. The depth chart showing a lot of transfers. I think these guys are impact players. Cam Lumpkin, solid guy. Sam Lockett as well. Another transfer at free safety. I like him a whole lot. I think he has some serious potential. I like to see the secondary continuing to improve. I think they're a solid group, and I love the way they worked in the portal.
Looking at the schedule preview and prediction, I really like this team, Nick. I think the defense will continue to progress. Overall, this is a very good football team because the passing game I'm a big fan of. I think the defensive line will certainly help them out in some of these crucial situations. We'll see what happens on the O-line, but it's not really an area of concern here in the preseason. Secondary can certainly regress. We just talked about them. I think all 3 levels on this defense are pretty solid. The run defense and pass rush should be there for them. Tough schedule, though. They got Wisconsin, Oregon, USC, Utah. So we got some winnable games against Oregon State and Stanford. The road games give them a disadvantage, but interesting matchups. The Oregon State balance, I think, is going to be tough for them. The Stanford passing game is a very interesting matchup. I don't think Wazoo will take advantage of the trenches, though, and that's the reason why I have them losing that game, because this is not a team that's going to want to do it on the ground. They're going to want to do it through the air, even if it's available for them. So I have them going 6-6, which I hate to do because I think this team is a lot better than a 6-win football team, but the schedule is tough. Don't be shocked one bit if they take one of these 4 games against Wisconsin to Utah, one of those games early on in the year. I think they might upset somebody, Nick. I would not be shocked one bit.
I agree if you think they have some serious upset potential. I do like this defense, and I think this offense is going to lay up the scoreboard this year, outpace some of these high-flying teams in the Pac-12. I like this team to get 7 wins this year. I think they can beat Stanford on the road. Tough draw on the road, but I think they have enough in them to beat them on offense. I like what they have with that potential. This is a bowl game team for me. They definitely look better than a 6-7 win team on paper, but when you have the schedule and you combine it with the road games, they have to play at Wisconsin, at Oregon State, at Stanford, at USC. Tough draws on the road, but I love the talent they have on offense, and I really think this team can light it up this year. They should easily be in a bowl game for me.
I wouldn't be shocked if this team was in the conference championship game. To be honest with you, if you're looking for a sleeper in the Pac-12, this is it. If they're clicking on all cylinders and they're playing good football, I wouldn't be shocked one bit. Especially with a pretty easy slate in November, if they have themselves aligned for a berth in Las Vegas, I think they'll get the job done. Do you see that? Is that a realistic expectation, you'd say?
I think it might be a little too early for that sort of expectation, because I do think they have a tough schedule in October. It's a brutal, going USC, Oregon State, Utah. So I think they'll find themselves a little bit of a hole there. But this is a talented team. They could definitely catch some of these teams off guard if they're not paying attention. They're not ready for that high-flying attack led by Cam Ward.
I have them losing, 5 out of 6 there from September to November. So that seems kind of shocking. I think this team's definitely better. Now we'll see what happens, though. Very excited for this team this fall. I think, as always, this was fun. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, and see you next time.